I've done videos on my other channel about the history of the Filtex Corporation and its entrance into the built-in vacuum business. I recently realized that I've got a big, nice lineup of Filtex and AirVac machines, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of go through the years of the evolution of their products, because I think it's interesting, and you as a watcher may think it's interesting because you're a vac nut like me, or you may just have one of these in your house and you're trying to figure out what to do with it. So I'm going to start with the earliest machine. We have these here in chronological order from 70s through the 2000s. And starting with this one, this is a 1975 machine. This is a 2 motors in series, and it's a model TS300L made by VSI, Natter Manufacturing, which bought Filtex from the Hoppy family in 1960 something, 67, I think, 66. Anyway, very good unit. We can still get these motors. They, you know, for being 50 years old at this point, these are viable machines. We cannot get the cloth bags or things like that, so there's some limitations because the company's just long gone, and so are the parts. Lots of times with systems from this era, you usually only got a non-electrical hose, straight suction. The system would have turned on when you opened the wall inlet, and your basic set of floor tool and rug tool and the dusting and upholstery, all very high quality, but to get wall-to-wall carpets clean today, you probably need something more than this. In somewhere between 1980 and 85, when they made this one, Natter sold Filtex to a company called Fairchild Industries, and they moved from Temple City, California to Laverne, California. Still very close in design. This is a different model. This is a TC600L with 2 larger motors in parallel. This was made for larger homes than the TS300L, though they were available concurrently. So that's that logo tells me that this machine is a Fairchild unit instead of a VSI unit. Same bags. These both use an 11-gallon Filtex disposable paper bag inside of the cloth bag, which is permanent. At some point, post-1985, Fairchild sold Filtex to Music and Sound, and this unit from 88 is an example of an early music and sound machine. They transferred production to Dallas, Texas. They retained the paper bag design, same idea. This happens to be an enclosed motor machine, a model TSP700L, 2 motors in parallel. They would have made a 2-motor in parallel machine prior to that, but it would have been external motors, kind of like this one. They also made this in a triple motor machine. They made some single motor units. They continued to make a line of external motor units that you could see even into the early 90s, as you will see. But this became a very common unit, that TSP700L. In 1989, they revised the design somewhat, and this is an NTSP700L, new TSP700L, and still 2 motors inside in parallel. They made this in a triple motor, and they made external motor units. At this point is where we would start to see some electric power heads more commonly. Oftentimes this would be with a wire reinforced hose like this, and your floor tool would have been oftentimes a basic combo tool. By this time, they had discontinued making the Filtex famous metal attachments that said Filtex in them in beautiful script, and they were more generic. You could actually get a power nozzle even in the 70s, but it would have come with an external long cord. It wouldn't have been integrated into the hose like this. Let's see. So M&S, this is a machine from 1991, and you can see that the logo is the same, or almost the same. The color has changed somewhat, and this is a 2 motors in series unit. Same exact machine as that earliest one which you saw, but this is now called an FX500. Same disposable bags. We can still get the motors. This also is a pretty good machine. You know, the hoses and tools will be kind of obsolete by now, but functional, you know. M&S had owned a brand called AirVac since the 1980s, and you could get an AirVac machine with AirVacs were always bagless, and the ones in the 80s had a foam filter. Starting in the early 90s, they had an inverted cloth bag and a bucket that you took off the bottom to empty them, kind of like a Beam or a Brone or a, it's a very common design, but those were the AirVacs. At some point in the early 2000s, they dropped the Filtex name entirely, and they started to call all their machines AirVacs, and they made the bagged machines the Blue Series, and they made their bagless machines the Red Series. And they were the same color, just different labels. Around this time, this machine's an 02, this is an 06. You could get a Plastiflex hose, crush proof. Ironically, a crush proof hose means that you can crush it, it just springs back when you let go. So crush proof is a little bit of a confusing name, but that's what that means, as opposed to a wire reinforced hose, which you can't crush it by hand. And if you do manage to crush it, like someone did here, it stays crushed. This is an inferior hose. It's heavier, it chokes off more of the airflow, and it's just not as nice to use. It also will tend to rub the paint off the corners, though you can get a hose sock, obviously. So back to the units. In the 2000s, the AirVac was either the Blue Series, the Red Series, or they did make a Gold Series, which was a disposable bag Filtex style unit, but with soft start and a longer warranty. And also it had some sound insulation, so it ran somewhat quieter. They had done away with the external motors by then, and most of these were a single motor. So instead of a unit like this for a 3,000 square foot home with 2 motors, you got a unit with a single motor. For a big home, you had the option of a 240 volt parallel motor unit, which would have been the FX900 in the AirVac line. In somewhere right after 06, for example, this one, which is a 2008 example, AirVac stopped making their old school metal units, and they shifted the design to what is, in my opinion, one of the lousier central vac designs out there. I made a video years ago and I was rather unkind to these. My apologies if you have one in your house. They weren't lacking in suction, they were lacking in quality. And they did make a Red Series, which was bagless, just an inverted cloth filter. You took the bucket off the bottom and emptied it. They did make this in a Blue Series, which was their disposable bag machine, identical on the outside, blue in color, but it was not a disposable filter bag. And that to me is one of the biggest benefits of a disposable bag, is it's doing your filtering for you. You change that bag a couple times a year and you're getting a fresh filter. No, they just stuck a paper bag inside the bucket and they retained the same cloth filter that was doing your filtering and also probably leaking a lot of dust and choking off a lot of airflow. These also had issues with the motor plates pulling away from the housing because of the plastic housing, and the screw bosses would strip out. It was just I like trading these in. I would rather trade in a newer AirVac than an old Filtex. Fixing old units warms my heart, though my team members have been slowly curing me of this affliction, because they've finally convinced me that people really do like to have new stuff when it's a big improvement over their old stuff. But anyway, if you're a vacuum nut like myself, I hope you've gotten a kick out of this. If you have one of these in your home, I hope this has been somewhat useful and worth the 10 minutes that you just took out of your life to watch it. We can support all of these units with newer hoses, with bags, with motors, etc. Whether you just want to repair or whether you want to upgrade your system, we can help you. And we thank you for watching.